What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Coffee with the Commish. Getting ready for the NBA playoffs starting on Saturday. We still have a couple more playing games to determine the 8th seed in the East and the West tonight, but we all know that these 8 seeds don't stand much of a chance. So I'm bringing back my guy, Joe. We're going to talk NBA playoffs. In this video, we're going to go series by series in the Western Conference, 1-8, 2-7, 3-6, 4-5. Do the same thing in the East, and then we're going to give you our thoughts on who's coming out of each conference and who's walking away with the Larry O'Brien trophy here in a couple of months. So without further ado, Joe, welcome back, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. We have exciting NBA playoffs coming here in less than 48 hours. Once again, I think more so than probably any other season, there's a lack of a consensus favorite. The favorite out west, the Phoenix Suns, they've only played 8 games with Kevin Durant in the lineup, so I think that creates a lot of question marks. The Milwaukee Bucks appear to be the favorite in the Eastern Conference for good reasons, which we'll get into in a little bit. But Boston, Philadelphia loom large there as well. So let's just jump right into it. Let's start with this first series. It's going to be Denver against the winner of Minnesota and OKC. If Minnesota or OKC, whoever wins this game, does either team stand any chance of upsetting the Denver Nuggets here?
Look, the Thunder, they're just way too young right now. Obviously, that game that they had just played with Giddey and Shea combining for, I think it was like 62 points or something like that. I mean, it was awesome, and it really shows you how much potential they have with 15 first-round picks in the next 3 years. Just a really good, young, developing team. They just don't stand a chance against the Nuggets. The Nuggets are more seasoned. They have a 2-time MVP with Nikola Jokic. Nobody on the Thunder is going to be able to guard him. So they don't stand a chance. Now, if the Timberwolves win, which I do think is the team that's going to win, they're going to stand a little bit better of a chance. But again, the Nuggets are going to find a way to run Gobert off the court, just like what happened last year with Gobert being in Utah. Gobert was virtually unplayable. I mean, he's a great rim protector. He's a great regular season player. But, when coaches really start making game plans, Gobert is not going to be the best guy to have out on the court. And so I don't even think that I think the Timberwolves might be able to squeak out maybe a game at home, but I don't really see anything like that. I think the Nuggets are really good. Michael Porter Jr. has been playing well as of recent. Jamal Murray is kind of doing his thing. And obviously Jokic is one of the front runners for the MVP, and they're pretty deep too. So I'm really liking the Nuggets winning in either 4 or 5 on this one. And it doesn't really matter who they're playing there. So
I feel the same way. The big thing with Denver, and we've seen it in recent postseasons, is if they don't take care of business on their home floor, and if they don't have home court for a series, they put themselves in a vulnerable spot. In the first round, of course, they're the number 1 seed in the Western Conference, so they'll have home court all the way through the Western Conference Finals if they continue to advance. OKC, you mentioned the youth this season, only 16-25 on the road. Minnesota, closer to 500, but still not a team that anyone would say is outstanding on the road. It's also a whole different beast having to go into altitude and try to win. Both of these teams will have played a couple of games now just to get into the first round, while Denver's been resting, recovering, and Jokic and Aaron Gordon and Porter and a couple of these guys have been on a minutes restriction / workload maintenance type of thing across the last week or two of the regular season anyway. So Denver, to me, is far superior talent-wise. They have home court. You can see they're 34-7 during the regular season. Worst case scenario, Denver's going to win all 4 at home, but I'm in the same boat with you. I think this will be a sweep or a gentleman's sweep, regardless of whether it's Minnesota or OKC in this spot. We do have another seemingly lopsided matchup in the Western Conference, but 2 seed, 7 seed. It's not as far apart as I think a lot of people would expect, just if you're looking at the bracket and you're looking at the difference in seeding. But Memphis, you can see 51-31 during the regular season. The Lakers 43-39. The Lakers obviously dealt with a number of injuries this season. Davis missed games. LeBron missed games. They made some mid-season trades to try to beef up this roster. Memphis lost a couple of guys, Steven Adams, Brandon Clark. They're not at full strength. Ja Morant, we went through that whole situation as well. What do you make of this? There's a lot of people that are on the Lakers long-term, a lot of people that are narrative bettors who think that it would be great for the NBA and great for the product of the NBA if they can get LeBron back in the finals. The books are showing a little bit of respect as well. Looking at the futures prices, when you look at teams to win the championship, the Lakers actually are 14-1 at Caesars, which is a pretty sharp book, and the Grizzlies are 18-1, showing that the Lakers might actually have a little bit more respect from the sports books here, or at least more liability, depending what your perspective is on that. So what do you have here? LeBron and the Lakers, Morant and the Grizzlies. What should we expect?
Yeah. So the NBA.com's got 53% of fans are choosing the Lakers to actually beat the Grizzlies here. But I'm not totally convinced on the Lakers. I do like their roster construction until you kind of get down to their bench. But D'Angelo Russell, I don't think he's going to be able to guard John Morant very well. His defensive rating this season has been at 116, so not very good. And John Morant's hungry. I mean, this Grizzlies team has been was knocked out last season, and they're kind of like ready to go. LeBron's obviously going to get his. Nobody on the Grizzlies is really going to be able to guard him. I know that Dylan Brooks is going to be the main defender on him there, but LeBron's going to get his, Ja is going to get his. So then you kind of have to look at the other players. Anthony Davis and Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to be a great matchup, and it's going to be really entertaining to watch since Jaren Jackson is one of the front runners for Defensive Player of the Year this year. And obviously Anthony Davis is Anthony Davis. I mean, he's a couple-time All-NBA player. He's a perennial All-Star. He's playing great this year. And then you kind of look at Desmond Bane, and Desmond Bane's the other guy where it's like nobody on the Lakers team is really going to be able to guard him very well. And if Desmond Bane gets hot and John Morant gets hot, I don't think the Grizzlies are really going to lose to this Lakers team. And kind of like, I mean, you go down into the bench. Tyus Jones is a great point guard off the bench who's going to be able to dish the ball out. I think John Morant was out for a game last year in the playoffs, and Tyus Jones kind of came in there, and I think the Grizzlies won by like 30 points or something like that. So he's a great point guard off the bench. Luke Kennard is a great shooter. John Conchar I'm actually pretty high on Conchar. I think kind of what he brings to the Grizzlies with his spacing is really good because, the one thing that they're lacking a little bit is shooting. So I do like the Grizzlies in this still, even though a lot of people are choosing the Lakers. I think the Grizzlies are going to either win in 6 or 7. But, the Lakers are one injury away from it just being a disaster, and their top 2 players are very injury prone. LeBron, as much as people hate to see it, he's not what he used to be. Obviously, he's putting up the numbers, but he's just not playing as much. And so it's really going to be interesting when you get to game 4, game 5 to see if LeBron's going to have to sit one out or whether he's going to be able to power through. And so that's why I like the Grizzlies is just because, the Lakers are a little too injury riddled and the Grizzlies are young. And I think they just match up a little bit better. So
it's a very interesting series. It goes without saying. And you got LeBron and Anthony Davis on the court. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be good entertainment. You mentioned the injuries. You can see LeBron played only 54 games this year. Same with Anthony Davis. They go acquired D'Angelo Russell. He's played 17 games for the Lakers so far. Austin Reeves has been a guy who's really been the one steady, calming, saving grace for the Lakers all season. Been playing well. It's super interesting to me to see that for the series, if you go on FanDuel and you try to bet this series, the Lakers are plus 120 to advance. The Grizzlies are minus 142, which is a playable money line. Like if this was just a straight up game, I think Memphis has done enough during the regular season that they should be favored. I think the line makes sense here. But if we go and we take a look again at the standings, Memphis is one of these teams. They dominated at home. They were 35-6 in their home building this year at the FedEx Forum. The Lakers proved that they could win at home and win on the road. They have a guy who's been to more NBA finals than everyone on Memphis's roster combined with LeBron James. You have Anthony Davis, who was there when the Lakers won a championship in the bubble, and you can debate how much that championship counted or didn't count. The fact of the matter is they won games. They advanced through different series, and they ended up holding the trophy at the end of it. Memphis is in a lot of trouble here if they can't defend home court. And I think not having a healthy Steven Adams potentially and not having Brendan Clark, some of these guys that aren't as sexy as John Moran and Desmond Bane on the roster, they're not household names. They don't have the shoe endorsements and things like that. But the Lakers are well equipped to do this. And I say this as someone who's not going to be rooting for the Lakers. I do not like LeBron James. I'm not a huge LeBron stan. I'm not an Anthony Davis fan at all. I don't even think the Lakers are that well constructed as a roster. I think they're incredibly overrated, but I'm just not high on Memphis at all. This is the team that consistently talks every regular season. They get to the postseason, they might win a series. They face a team with more talent than them, and they get sent home. The Lakers, I think, have a more veteran presence, which I think matters at this time of the year. Memphis, we read the reports with Morant, even discounting the stuff with the gun and with the suspension. Steven Adams holding a team meeting because the team couldn't win on the road because Morant and the guys were out partying and doing irresponsible things that took away from the performance on the court. That's a real concern in a 7-game series. If you blow a home game and now you have to go to Hollywood, where, by the way, the nightlife is really fun, where the weather's going to be beautiful when they're out in LA next couple of weeks. I think this is fair, and frankly, I do lean Lakers in this spot at plus 120. I think it's warranted. I don't think they advance past the second round, but Memphis has some holes. I think they have some injuries as well. I think as long as LeBron and AD can stay healthy, I think they find a way to probably win this in 7 games, 6 or 7.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, it really could go either way here. It's definitely going to be interesting to see if John Morant kind of his whole him going to kind of his counseling and stuff like that to really see if he's going to be all business here. And so, this is definitely going to be one of the most interesting first round matchups that we're going to see. So,
absolutely. Well, let's move on. Let's go to this 3-6 matchup. Sacramento was the 3 seed. I almost said Golden State was the 3 seed because that just feels more natural. But Sacramento is the 3 seed. Golden State is the 6 seed. Injury news heading into this series: Golden State will get Andrew Wiggins back. Last played on February 13th. Reports from the Athletic say he's going to come off the bench, play around 25 minutes. Where do you stand on this, man? Golden State was 11-30 during the regular season on the road, but we've seen them win championships. We've seen them win a lot of championships. Last year, they won at least one road game in every series that they had on the way to winning the championship. Sacramento, they ranked 24th in defensive efficiency during the regular season, but they did prove that they could win at home. They could win on the road. Go look at their regular season standings. They were one of the few teams in the Western Conference that could win on the road. Everybody wants to make a big deal about the fact that Golden State was 11-30. Denver was below 500 on the road. Memphis below 500 on the road. Phoenix below 500 on the road. The Clippers were essentially 500 on the road. You can see 21-20. So all of these teams that have an opportunity to contend in the Western Conference, or at least all of the teams that the media is giving a chance to contend in the Western Conference, have all been bad on the road, which I think almost completely negates the Warriors' main vulnerability here. The really interesting thing is you can get the Kings 80-1 to win the NBA championship, and the Warriors are as low as 8-1 at Caesars. So when you see this massive discrepancy here, is it all reputation? Are we overblowing the past accomplishments of the Warriors and not giving the Kings enough credit? What are your thoughts here, and what do you expect in this first round?
Look, if there was no Steph Curry and you couldn't give him the Finals MVP award, who was that going to? It was going to Andrew Wiggins. 20 to 25 minutes a game from a guy who was an all-star last year is huge for Golden State. He's a great defender. He rebounds the ball. He doesn't do the flashy stuff, and he gets his job done, honestly. There are two things that you know about Golden State. It's Steve Kerr schematically, and it's Golden State is going to shoot the lights out no matter what. They have Klay Thompson. They have Jordan Poole. They have Steph Curry. Andrew Wiggins can knock it down. Draymond Green's back up to, I believe, 33% from the three-point line this season. And Sacramento is awful defensively. They're 24th in defensive rating. I like the Warriors, man. Obviously, like you brought up, they weren't great on the road. They're one of the worst people who are still in or one of the worst teams who are still in the playoffs on the road. But Steph Curry has rings. Klay Thompson has rings. Draymond Green has rings. This team is basically virtually the same. The Kings are inexperienced. I mean, this is De'Aaron Fox's first playoffs. I believe this. I don't think this is Domantas Sabonis's first playoffs. I think he's been in a couple of them, maybe with Oklahoma City and Indiana. But, this is just kind of looks the same to me as last year when or the year that Golden State and Memphis had to play, where Memphis was this really young, raw team who was really flashy and they looked really good. And this is kind of how Sacramento looks to me right now. But the Warriors are the Warriors, man. And getting Andrew Wiggins back, who really, one player does make a huge difference on a team, especially when he can guard any position on the court, maybe aside from the center. So I really do like Golden State here. I think Sacramento is going to blow them out in game one because they're so excited for their team to be back. But Steve Kerr is going to switch something up. Golden State's going to take game two. They're going to win the next two. Sacramento may take one or two more. I think I've got Golden State in 6 here. I just don't see Sacramento beating them 4 out of the 7 games that they're going to be playing. So that's kind of where I'm standing with it.
Yeah, you bring up a number of good points. Last season, this is Golden State's numbers from last season's playoff run. And you can see Wiggins averaged 16.5 a game, 7.5 boards. You mentioned the defensive versatility for him. So getting him back is huge. He's part of their big three. Like, I know Draymond Green has been there. He's won the rings with them. But Wiggins is equally as important in this roster in terms of success. So getting him back is huge in any capacity. It'll be interesting to see how rusty he is when he comes back. I know he came back a couple different points this season from different ailments, and just it took him a minute to adjust to really poor shooting percentages. So it'll be really interesting to see how he comes out to start this series. Sabonis, I just looked it up while you were talking. You can see he's played in the postseason before, but he's never started a postseason game. He hasn't been in a postseason atmosphere since 2019 with the Indiana Pacers. So he's never played a prominent role on a postseason team. The matchup stuff that you talked about, Golden State this season, you can see they were second in three-point percentage as a team, led the NBA in three-point attempts per game. Offensively, you go look at the Kings, and they were 26th in opponent three-point percentage as a defense. So, yeah, it doesn't get much more difficult than that. Of you can't defend the three-point line well, and you're playing a team that will shoot the lights out from beyond the arc. So, tough matchup for Sacramento. It's a tough spot for myself because I think Golden State, if they can get through this series against a team, again, we can bring it back up to the standings here. If they can get through Sacramento, who was 25-16 on the road this year, 23-18 at home, if they can get through this first round and they get Wiggins back into the fold and maybe back into the starting lineup, and Jordan Poole is looking a little bit more mature than we saw in last year's postseason, making better decisions with the basketball, then all of a sudden Golden State is just as dangerous as anyone that's left because, again, they got to beat Denver once in the altitude. They got to beat Memphis or the Lakers or whoever once in their home building. And the Lakers, they would actually have home court against if they ended up matched up with them at any point. So for me, if you think Golden State's winning this series, in my mind, you're better off betting them to win the championship at plus 950. You can get them at DraftKings, or if you go look at their Western Conference odds, taking them plus 400 at PointsBet. And this line's actually moved. It was plus 500 not even a week ago. So if you like them to get through this series, I think Sacramento legitimately is their toughest opponent. There's ways that they can exploit Phoenix. They can beat Denver. They have beat Denver in the past. Memphis just does not have that roster continuity. They don't have the chemistry. They don't have the organizational structure that Golden State has. Golden State is going to have the better coach probably in every series that they're in because of what you just said. Kerr he's been there. He's incredibly intelligent. He lets the guys play. He knows when he needs to press a button and when he can just trust his 4-time NBA champions that are on the floor to figure things out. So for me, it's like, if you like the Kings, they're plus 225 on FanDuel to win this series. But if you like Golden State, I think I'm more interested in the longer shot stuff here to win the Western Conference or to win the finals.
Totally.
We have one more series in the West, and somehow this has devolved into probably the least exciting matchup out of the 4, maybe the second least exciting. Maybe you don't care what Denver is going to do against Minnesota or OKC, but Phoenix and the Clippers, they're not going to have Paul George. Still no timetable for a return for him. This season, when Paul George was off of the floor, the Clippers were 25th percentile in offensive efficiency, 42nd percentile in defensive efficiency. Wins and losses, the Clippers were 32-24 with George on the floor, 12-14 with him not in uniform. On the other side, We mentioned Phoenix hasn't played a whole lot with Kevin Durant, but when they have, they're 8-0 with Durant in the lineup. So, what are you thinking here? Who's coming away with a series win? Who's advancing to the next round?
Yeah, totally. I mean, Monty Williams, I think he's another one of those guys who's up there for one of the best coaches in the league. And adding a piece in Kevin Durant, which, I have my thoughts about that trade. I'm not too high on it because I feel like they gave up a lot of depth. But, the Clippers are down, and, I've never really liked their roster construction. I just don't think they really have a vision for where they want their team to be. And not having Paul George, it's just a recipe for disaster for the Clippers right now. Ty Lue got carried through a finals from LeBron James. I just think the Clippers are too dysfunctional right now, kind of similar towards the Grizzlies, just in a little bit of a different way. The Suns have kind of, they've been there. They've played at the highest level. I mean, obviously Kawhi Leonard has, but, Russell Westbrook is going to be your second option. It's just not going to happen to me. Honestly, it's really just not going to happen to me. I really see the Suns sweeping them in 4. I think the Suns are going to take the first 2. I think the Clippers' confidence is going to go down. I think they're going to exploit Russell Westbrook because, Chris Paul is one of the all-time best in steals. He's going to know how to guard him. They're not going to match up very well. Nobody's going to be able to guard Devin Booker. Kawhi Leonard's going to be on Kevin Durant, so Kevin Durant might have a little bit more of a down series. Zubac isn't going to be able to do anything on DeAndre Ayton. And let's just mention that Josh Okogie is also a very good defender. So I like the Suns here in 4. Maybe it's a gentleman's sweep and the Clippers can take one in LA. But, it's just another disappointing year for the Clippers, man. I mean, they traded Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and a plethora of picks and their whole roster for Paul George, and then they got Kawhi Leonard, and everybody thought that they were gonna go far. But it's just another kind of disappointing year for the Clippers, and it might be time to start looking in another direction here. So I've got the Suns in either 4 or a gentleman's sweep. I'm not going to be watching it too closely. I just don't really see the Clippers really pulling this one out. So,
for what it's worth, the market does not see the Clippers pulling this out either. Phoenix is minus 500 to win the series, so very, very heavy odds. The books are expecting them to get the job done. They are expecting them to get the job done in 5 games. You can get a plus 220 for Phoenix to win the series, 4-1. If you think they pull off the sweep, that's plus 450 over on FanDuel. If you think it goes 6 games, that's plus 400. Personally, I am with you. I was one of those idiots who saw a little bit of a glimmer of hope with the Clippers around the All-Star break, and I thought maybe they were the team in the Western Conference that, in an open Western Conference, where, again, we're looking at the standings here, and it's, Denver can't win on the road. Memphis can't win on the road. Like, Sacramento's 24th in defensive efficiency this season. Phoenix has only played 8 games with Kevin Durant, who's a high-usage player that just came to town. Golden State has been dealing with a number of injuries. They're older. There's a lot of miles on these guys. And then you're down to the 7, 8, 9, 10 seed. So the West looks wide open. And I had sort of convinced myself that the Clippers were this team that they've just never been able to get over the hump. This was finally going to be the year where Kawhi and PG put it together and were able to make a deep playoff run more than anything, because there just wasn't a true dominant team out West, and the Clippers might have been able to sneak their way through a couple of rounds. But yeah, this looks like a foregone conclusion at this point. I think Phoenix makes quick work of this. Phoenix still's not lost a game with Kevin Durant, so maybe they lose one here. Maybe they finally get battle tested for the first time, but I don't think they're going to have to expend a significant amount of energy here. Ty Lue was a coach in Cleveland, I have a lot of experience with him, both in the local media and now watching him nationally. Not a great coach. Maybe he manages personalities well. Maybe he has advantages that are not seen by the public, and there are more advantages behind closed doors. But once you get between the lines, Ty Lue he's outclassed by the coach on the other bench more often than he is not. So for me, I'm with you. I think I'm going Phoenix in 4 here. I think Phoenix is still undefeated with Kevin Durant in the lineup going into the second round. Want to go to the East?
We can do it. Yeah, let's do it.
Your Milwaukee Bucks, they're going to get Miami or Chicago in the first round, the winner of this play-in game. Is there any chance, and I don't want you to speak as like a cryptic fan who's like, oh, like I can already see everything going wrong. I want you to speak as, is Milwaukee against an 8 seed? It's going to be Miami or Chicago. What do you expect?
Heat Bulls. I've got the Heat beating the Bulls here. It's just kind of similar to Denver with me, honestly. There are too many holes in the Heat's roster. There are too many holes in the Bulls roster. The Bulls aren't very great defensively. Vucevic is just going to get eaten alive by Brook Lopez. Giannis is Giannis. Drew Holiday's having a career year. The Bucks are playing out of their minds when Chris Middleton is on the floor, and he's just getting better. He's getting even more healthy. I just see him making quick work out of the Bulls or the Heat. I mean, the Heat, that Tyler Hero extension, it's not really looking too great for me right now. Kyle Lowry isn't playing as well as he has been in the past 2 seasons. For the Bulls, no Lonzo Ball is really hurting him. Obviously, he's not been here the whole season, but there are just too many holes in both these teams' rosters, and I think they're both kind of in the same realm where they're trying to make a push to be a contender, and so they've got players that are pretty intriguing like Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler, and then on the Bulls side they've got Zach LaVine, and I guess you could throw in DeMar DeRozan in that conversation. I think he's starting to get a little old, but again, it's kind of one of those similar circumstances where it's like, is it time for them to start looking in another direction? And I just don't see them really I just don't see them winning 4 games against Milwaukee. Could they pull off a win on their own home court? Potentially. Yeah, they could. Any team can. But I just think Milwaukee, with adding Jay Crowder, they added Joe Ingles, Chris Middleton's back. Bobby Portis is playing like a 6th man of the year right now. I just see him making quick work of either team right now. I see him as a more talented team than when they won the NBA Finals this year. So I just think it's going to be really hard for 2 teams that just came off of grueling games where they're fighting to stay alive. I just don't see it happening against Milwaukee here. I think Milwaukee's just one of 3 teams in the Eastern Conference that is just going to overwhelm teams with their depth and good coaching. So I've got Milwaukee in 4 here.
If Miami wins, I have Milwaukee in 5. We don't have odds on this obviously yet because the play-in game hasn't happened, so books are not giving us these options. But Milwaukee's my pick to win the NBA championship. They're 29-7 after Chris Middleton came back. You can see the depth on the screen here. I mean, there's so many different guys who could put the ball in the basket. These guys serve ancillary purposes on the defensive end of the floor as well, spacing. There's outside of Golden State, there's probably not a roster in the postseason that has as many perimeter shooters available on a nightly basis as Milwaukee. When Giannis, Drew Holiday, and Chris Middleton have been on the floor together this season, Milwaukee ranks in the 99th percentile in offensive efficiency. That alone is going to make them competitive against any team in the Eastern Conference. Milwaukee's also pretty damn good defensively, which we've seen in their deep postseason runs in prior seasons. Miami, I'm with you. Like, Kyle Lowry's more the issue for me than anyone else. I think he just doesn't organically fit. He's talking about DeMar DeRozan getting old. I think Kyle Lowry has been old, and Miami, for whatever reason, didn't realize that or didn't want to acknowledge it. I never really understood that acquisition. In Chicago, like you said, Lonzo Ball, he missed the whole season, but he's their best perimeter defender when healthy, and the roster's sort of built in a way that you need Lonzo Ball to be healthy for them to be able to defend even at a moderate level. And without him, they're defensively inept. So Milwaukee, for me, I think again, 5 games against Miami. I think Miami's just too well coached with Spoelstra. I think the organization, the culture is too strong. Jimmy Butler, I can't see Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo getting swept. I think Hero's got the potential to go off for one particular game, but there's little to no threat in my mind of Milwaukee being a rare one seed getting upset in this round. So we're aligned there. I think you can rest your fandom a little bit. I don't think you'll have to stress too much. One team that may have to do a little bit stressing, the Boston Celtics taking on the Atlanta Hawks, the 2-7 matchup in the Eastern Conference. Boston went to the finals last year, and now all of a sudden things seem, at least publicly, narrative speaking, seem to be unraveling a little bit. We've seen some Jaylen Brown talks going to other teams. Internally, there seems to be a little bit of friction, a little bit more chaos than where they were last season. Because if people remember last season, it was the same type of, hey, are we going to trade Jaylen Brown? Are we going to trade Jason Tatum? But that was early in the season. And then they got hot. And then it sort of felt like they really rallied around this. Like, we're not trading Jaylen Brown. Like, we can get this done. And they used that to propel them into the postseason. This year, it does feel different going into mid-April, into May. Atlanta sort of squeaked in there, obviously coming in through the play-in tournament. But what do you make of it here? I mean, is Boston legitimately on upset alert, or do they get through the first round and maybe we'll start talking more seriously about an upset in the next round?
Yeah, I mean, if you kind of remember in the past 3 years, I mean, even when Brad Stevens was coaching, there were always reports of, oh, we heard yelling in the Boston Celtics locker room. Oh my gosh, are Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum going to be able to work together? Like, does one of them need to be traded? Like, what's going on here? So I feel like there's always been a little bit of a narrative around the Boston Celtics and around the organization, just because of how historically well they've been playing. But, you know, I don't really think they're on upset alert. I really do like DeJounte Murray. I do think Trae Young is a little bit overrated, but, you know, Boston, I mean, they've been there, and they added Malcolm Brogdon, who's just another like calming presence in a locker room. I mean, he was, I believe he was either the president or the vice president of the Players Association. So he's got to have a good head on his shoulders. He's playing like a 6th man of the year this year, almost shooting 50, 40, 90. I just don't see Boston getting upset by an Atlanta team where Quinn Snyder's come in and he hasn't really been all that great, like how Atlanta fans have been hoping. And, you know, Atlanta is in this little phase where it's like, who are we gonna play? Are we gonna play on Yucca Okongwu, or are we gonna go young, play him, or are we gonna play Clint Capella, or what are we gonna do? So I would almost argue that the Hawks are a little bit more dysfunctional just because they brought in a coach that's been more than underwhelming. Trae Young has been just shooting and not really hitting at a high volume. DeJounte Murray obviously went on that press run after he was traded to San Antonio and kind of made a name for himself as a little bit of a locker room nightmare, I guess is the best word I can say for it. Maybe his teammates like him, maybe they don't. But, you know, Boston was in the finals last year. They added a really good player. They didn't lose anybody. Robert Williams is back. He's a great defender. Marcus Smart, former defensive player of the year. I didn't think he should have won it last year, but, you know, you can't disrespect how good he is at defending. And, you know, Trae Young's going to have an issue. And so I could see the Hawks winning one at home. But again, similar to the Bucks, you know, Boston, I just think they're too good. And I really like Joe Mazzulla. I love what he's done, kind of weathering the Ime Udoka kind of storm. I think that's why a lot of the narratives have been started up again, was because of him. But I really do like Boston here. I like them in 5. I think they're going to get it done. The Hawks are just squeaking in. I don't really think the Hawks have kind of put it together. So I've got Boston here in 5.
No disagreement from me. I think a lot of the friction that we've heard from the media is overblown with the Celtics. This team won 57 games during the regular season. It's not as if they've struggled, and if they have struggled, it's been relative to, you know, to what they could have been even better. They could have been a 60-win team or potentially more. But yeah, Boston's got too much talent. Another thing you always want to look at when you're entering the postseason here, Boston in the regular season, second in offensive efficiency, second in defensive efficiency. So they're very skilled on both ends of the floor. You can see they have the best net rating of any team in the league during the regular season. Atlanta, like we talked about with some of the teams out west, really struggled to win games on the road, 17-24 outside of their home building this season. Boston, dominant at home. It's going to be really tough for Atlanta to steal any of those games at the TD Garden. And Boston's more than capable of taking care of business on the road as well. And I'm with you. Like Atlanta, I think, is far more dysfunctional and far more in a crisis situation in terms of identity. Like what is Atlanta's identity? Are they a contender? Are they a team that's happy to be there? Like Trae Young has sort of been around, and like it feels like Trae Young should be competing for championships, but they have young pieces on this roster where you're like, oh, it's like this will be good to get him some playoff experience. So there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of cohesion, and similar to how you talked about the Clippers in my mind of like, what is the vision for this collection of talent? Clint Capella is not a rookie. Clint Capella is a guy who should be a complementary piece on a championship contending team. And there's just not there's nothing here that I like with regard to Atlanta to make me think Boston is in legitimate danger. I'm a little surprised to see Boston only minus 1,200 to win this series. I think it's a runaway. I think, and obviously minus 1,200 is a very heavy price to pay, but I think Boston has a legitimate chance to sweep the Hawks in this spot. I think 5 games is the default. That's what the books are expecting. Plus 155 for this series to end in 5 games. But I think I'd be more than happy to consider a plus 260 if that's a market that you want to attack for the next couple of weeks. Third team that I think both of us agree might have a shot in the Eastern Conference. We have Milwaukee, we have Boston, and then very non-sexy. It's just like it's Philadelphia. Philadelphia, the 3 seed. I think it's that tier of teams. They're playing the Brooklyn Nets, who banked enough wins with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving on the floor early in the season to earn the 6th seed. But after they went down, different story. You can see they held on to this final like non-play-in spot in the East where they get the automatic bid with the 6th seed. They went 12-15 from February 11th to the end of the regular season after Mikal Bridges came over and made his debut. In that span, they were 19th in net rating, 27th in rebound percentage, which is always a big issue this time of year. If you can't get rebounds and you're playing a grueling 7-game series, you're going to be at a disadvantage. So for me, there's not much to talk about here. I don't think there's much to talk about for anyone. Philly is the far better team, even if you don't like Doc Rivers, even if you don't like Harden or Embiid or whatever issues you have with Philadelphia. Brooklyn's not a playoff team. This team hasn't earned a playoff spot. They are here because of what Durant and Irving did early in the season. Maybe you disagree, but those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. I mean, I see Philly coming out of it. Joel Embiid's playing out of his mind. And I mean, I just don't think Nick Claxton is experienced enough to kind of weather that storm. Can Brooklyn steal one or 2 games? I think they might be able to. Purely because if you look at their roster construction, they're around a 500 team. And like you mentioned, they were around 500. They're 1 or 2 stars away from being right back off in the playoff contention. And so having players like Mikal Bridges and Nick Claxton and Dorian Finney-Smith and even Spencer Dinwiddie and Cam Johnson, you know, these are guys who have played on contending teams before, who have produced before. So don't be surprised if Philly does lose 1 or maybe even 2 games. I could see Brooklyn taking 2, just because I'm not as high on Philly. But no, Philly's definitely going to get the job done. I'm not worried for Philly at all. There might be a couple of frustrating games where Mikal Bridges has like a 40-point game or something like that, just because they're kind of hard to scout right now. But yeah, don't be surprised if Brooklyn takes 1 or 2 at home. But yeah, 76ers are definitely going to win this one in 5 or 6.
Yeah, it's a good point that you bring up too with Bridges. This is a guy this is not his first postseason, but it's his first postseason where he gets to be the clear-cut number 1 option on the offensive end of the floor for his team. Mikal Bridges might have a couple of 40 pieces up his sleeve, and I know Philly's been a quality defensive opponent this season, but yeah, you're absolutely right. It's not a young team that's 12-15 that's like devoid of talent in the aftermath of Durant and Irving. There's veteran presences as well with Dinwiddie, with Mikal Bridges and some of these other guys, Seth Curry, just down the roster. Like there's guys in that locker room that are not going to be overwhelmed by the moment. And frankly, they don't care if they're huge underdogs here. And if people say they don't belong in this postseason series. So I'm with you, but I'm 100%, 1000% taking Philadelphia to win in their first round. I think the Eastern Conference first round is not going to be that sexy. We're going to have Milwaukee steamroll their opponent. We're going to have Boston steamroll the Hawks, and Philadelphia, even if they lose a game or 2, I don't think we're ever going to be at a point in the series where we're like, oh my God, is Philly in danger? Like it should be those 3 teams advancing with little trouble. The one series that we do have in the Eastern Conference where there's a little bit of intrigue is the 4-5 matchup, the Cavs and the Knicks. The Cavs, major stride forward this year, adding Donovan Mitchell to the roster. Darius Garland's still there. Evan Mobley taking another step forward. Jared Allen, Lot of things to like about Cleveland, but this is their real first playoff experience as a team. Other than Donovan Mitchell, who's been there with Utah, the rest of these guys have pretty much just playing tournament experience, and it was just one game last year. On the other side, the Knicks have been there. They're built for it. Big media market. They have a coach in Tom Thibodeau who's been in the postseason a number of times. Julius Randle, unlikely to be available for game one, it sounds like, which is going to force Obi Toppin into the starting lineup. Probably see a lot more of Josh Hart on the floor as well, and the Knicks going small. So what do you think? What do you make of this matchup? The Knicks are plus 172 to win this series. The Cavs minus 205. So the books are definitely leaning towards Cleveland and leaning towards Cleveland relatively strongly. But what thoughts do you have regarding this matchup?
Yeah, so the way that I look at playoff matchups are basically down to individual player matchups here. And so I'm looking at the Knicks and I'm looking at Cleveland, and what I'm seeing is if Julius Randle doesn't come back in 2 games, Cleveland is going to win this series. And the reason that I'm saying this is because Darius Garland is an all-star, Donovan Mitchell is an all-star, Jarrett Allen's an all-star. You can't take that away. I mean, Donovan Mitchell has established himself in the postseason as a great postseason player. I mean, he's had a 50-point game in the postseason. Is Quentin Grimes going to be able to guard Donovan Mitchell? Is Jalen Brunson going to be able to guard him? Josh Hart might have the best shot against him, but then you have to worry about guys like Evan Mobley and Darius Garland and Jarrett Allen. The Cavs just throw way too many pieces at the Knicks, where I feel like Cleveland is going to win here in 6 or 7. Now, obviously, Jalen Brunson has been playing at an all-star level after the break, and so you can kind of put him in that conversation as kind of an all-star caliber player. But I mean, other than that, like, you know, you've got a 6-man in Emmanuel Quickly who's been playing well. If Julius Randle comes back, he'll be all right. Mitchell Robinson is a good center, and RJ Barrett's just kind of an inconsistent small forward here who I think is going to have a little bit of trouble against Isaac Okoro. So I'm not really that high on the Knicks. Now, like you said, Tom Thibodeau has been here. He's been in the playoffs. He knows how to win playoff series. JB Bickerstaff probably isn't as good of a coach as Tibbs is. But I just think that the talent that Cleveland has in their top 4 players is going to be able to get them through this round. I just think they have way too many guys who can give you a 30-point game. I mean, you take Donovan Mitchell out of the game, you have Darius Garland that you have to worry about. You take Garland and Mitchell out, you have Mobley and Allen. It's just they throw way too many pieces at you, and then they have good guys coming off the bench who fit their roles with Rubio, LeVert, and Chetty Osman. I just see them. You know, I really do like Cleveland winning in this. I know you're a fan and I know you're worried, but you know, I just think the Knicks are going to have another one of those playoff series, you know, like the other year when they were the 3 seed and they played the Hawks or whatever seeding that was, where, you know, New York came in and they looked pretty good, but you know, I think it's just going to be another one of those years where Julius Randle kind of upsets people and you know, they're back to the drawing board here. So I think it's going to be a close series, but I do think Cleveland's going to be able to pull this one out.
I'm less worried as a fan and more just looking at this you mentioned the Knicks Hawks series from a couple years ago. The Knicks had just arrived. That was the year where it was Knicks mania. The Knicks were a defensive fortress. They didn't have a whole lot of talent. It just felt like they were just willing themselves to wins on a regular basis. This roster, I think, is significantly better than that roster. Randall, his health pending, of course. But Jalen Brunson, this team has never had a Jalen Brunson there. Emmanuel Quickly finally being able to be unleashed and playing meaningful minutes for this team. I really like Quentin Grimes. I think what he proved down the stretch with a lot of these guys out. The guy can play basketball, and he can play basketball at a high level. I like him in a lesser role in this Knicks team. Josh Hart, I think, is one of the most versatile players in the entire NBA. I think he gives the Knicks a rebounding advantage in areas of the floor that maybe you don't think about needing to get a lot of rebounds. And I know Allen missed a couple of games against the Knicks during the regular season, but New York out-rebounded Cleveland in all 4 games that they played against each other during the regular season. The Knicks aren't devoid of talent when Randall's not on the floor. This season, according to Cleaning the Glass, they were 49th percentile in offensive efficiency without Randall, so about league average. still 84th percentile in defensive efficiency. So you could actually argue that they're a little bit better defensively with Randle not out there. Randle also, especially in big moments, he's a guy who he loves the big stage. He loves to take the big shot. The ball doesn't move as well late in games. We've all seen Julius Randle cost New York a couple of wins. He's also won a few games. It's kind of the nature of just being a superstar and operating in that type of way. But there's an opportunity for the ball to move more. There's an opportunity to get guys like Grimes and Hart some more shots and take advantage of Emmanuel quickly. And RJ Barrett, for me, he's the real wild card. You can see he averaged 20 points a game during the regular season, but it's the shooting percentages. That's what's more concerning. 43% from the field, 31% from beyond the arc, and only 74% from the line. He is someone that the New York Knicks need to step up in a big way, especially if Randle is not out there, which it doesn't look like he's going to be in game one. You've paid RJ Barrett a lot of money. RJ Barrett was high draft pick. You've invested a lot in him, a lot of different ways as a franchise. This is when RJ Barrett needs to step up. For me with Cleveland, it's like Donovan Mitchell. You mentioned the playoff success that he's had, and there's been a couple of postseasons with Utah. He averaged 36 a game in the 2020 season, 32 a game the year after that in the postseason, but never really had a sustained run deep into the postseason. The shooting percentages are not great outside of that one really amazing postseason run that we talked about in 2020. 45% from the field the year after that, 40%. His first couple stints in the postseason, really, really inefficient. So it's like that's a concern for me if I'm a Cleveland fan, which I am, of course. And I think more than anything, coaching matters in the postseason. And we talked about the advantages that Golden State might have with Steve Kerr. The Cavs have no advantages with JB Bickerstaff. They struggle to get the ball in bounds. They struggle to curtail runs. You mentioned Steve Kerr. If Golden State gets ran off the floor in game one, there's going to be an adjustment made. They're going to come back and be much, much better prepared for game two. It might not even take until game two. They might get run off the floor in the first half of game one, come out and have an answer for the second half of game one, and maybe win that game or at least be in a much more competitive spot to where they don't feel emotionally steamrolled after the series opener. Bickerstaff has never proven himself capable of making in-game adjustments. He struggles in a lot of the areas where basketball coaches have an opportunity to put their imprint on the game. I think Thibodeau outclasses him here, and I think the talent disparity here is not as stark as a lot of people are arguing with if Randle's not on the floor. Cleveland doesn't have playoff experience. The Knicks have been there. They've lost. They know what it feels like to lose. They know what it feels like to show up and have to play in that type of atmosphere. So for me, I don't think the Knicks win a championship this season, but I think the Knicks absolutely have an opportunity here at plus 172 to get the job done.
Yeah, totally. I could totally see that. I mean, it makes sense. Obviously, this is probably going to be the most interesting matchup that we see in the Eastern Conference. And it's just going to be one of those times where it's going to be which stars are going to show up, and is JB Bickerstaff going to be able to establish himself and maybe save his job for the next couple of seasons. So it's definitely going to be an interesting matchup to watch.
Yeah. He 100% has to win this series if he wants to be back next year. If the Cavs do not win this series with home court, with Julius Randle not at 100%, there is absolutely no way that JB Bickerstaff is coming back next season. But before we get out of here, Joe, let's give the people our thoughts. Eastern Conference winner, Western Conference winner, and then who's winning the championship. We'll start in the Western Conference. Who's coming out here? I mean, it is a little bit nebulous. There's a lot of arguments to be made for a lot of different teams. Who is it in your mind?
At first in the Western Conference, I was with the Suns, and we kind of talked about it a little bit. I think I kind of got a little bit more hung up on the fact that they have Devin Booker, Chris Paul, Kevin Durant, and DeAndre Ayton. They don't really have a bench that I'm very happy about. Terrence Ross has always been a pretty solid player, but he doesn't really have playoff experience. TJ Warren is extremely injury riddled. So I think if not the Phoenix Suns, the Golden State Warriors. I'm a little bit higher on the Golden State Warriors now, and it's all contingent on whether or not Andrew Wiggins is going to be able to play at the All-Star level that he was playing at before, and whether he's really going to be getting meaningful minutes, cracking that starting rotation like how he did in their run last season. But yeah, I believe it's going to be one of those two teams. I'm a little bit higher on Golden State just purely because they've been there and they've done it before. But yeah, I would say, yeah, I'll definitely take Golden State in this one. But it's definitely going to be very close and one that's very entertaining for NBA fans just because of how close it is. I don't think there's really a clear number one.
I feel the same way. I'm rolling with the Warriors. I think the Warriors also have the potential to get upset in the first round. The Warriors, for me, like I said earlier in the video, if you think they beat the Sacramento Kings, I think it makes all the sense in the world to invest in them to win the West or to win the championship. That first matchup for them is arguably their toughest against a Kings team that has just proven they can win in any building. They're kind of too young and too dumb to realize where they're supposed to win and where they're not supposed to win. And I know that's like not the most analytical thing to say in the world, but the rest of these teams in the Western Conference, they have the same main weakness as Golden State, which is they have not been able to win on the road. The one thing that Golden State has been able to prove is they've been able to win on the road in the postseason in previous years. They did it last year with the same big four, with Curry, Thompson, Wiggins, and with Draymond Green. They got the same coach. They've done this before. They have to get through Sacramento. Wiggins is just coming back. He's going to play 20, 25 minutes off the bench. They need him to be effective. They need him to be healthy, mentally engaged. He's been dealing with some serious personal stuff. If he's not there, it's going to be tough for Golden State. That's just pointing out the obvious. But if he's there, if he can separate what he's got going on in his personal life from the basketball court, Golden State at 4-1 still at points, but I think makes a lot of sense here. Phoenix, we haven't seen Phoenix get punched in the mouth yet, and winning a championship is it's rarely that easy. And for the Phoenix Suns, they haven't lost with Kevin Durant yet. They don't have a script of, okay, we got punched in the mouth and we fell behind by a lot of points. How do we come back and deal with this as a team? And sometimes you need a bench, which they did. They traded away some depth. They traded away some key pieces that have been there for them. So Phoenix, to me, they obviously have the most talent with Durant and Booker and Ayton and Chris Paul, but there's ways they can be exploited. And I think more than anything, they don't have a lot of court time together, which it does matter this time of the year, at least historically it has mattered. So I'm going Golden State. Hopefully Wiggins is ready to go, and obviously wishing him all the best with the personal stuff in his life as well. But what about the Eastern Conference? I know you're a huge Milwaukee Bucks fan. We've talked off the show. There's a pretty clear-cut tier in the Eastern Conference, which the books are reflecting here as well. It's going to be Milwaukee, Boston, or Philly representing the East in the NBA Finals. Which of these three teams, in your mind, gets the job done?
I'm going to sound biased because I'm a fan of them, but I've got to go with the Bucks on this one. And my reasoning for it is the Boston Celtics have basically ran back their exact same team. They've added Malcolm Brogdon, which has been a huge help, and that can't be discredited. The Bucks are basically running back their same team, plus Jay Crowder and plus Joe Ingles. So the Celtics and the Bucks have both gotten better. The key difference for me is Chris Middleton's availability here. The Bucks, I can't remember what this series, it was either 4-3 or 4-2 that the Celtics beat them in to advance last season. You know, if Chris Middleton is in the ball game, there's a lot less of an emphasis put on Giannis and put on Drew Holiday. I mean, when you've got a big three like that, that gets really, really dangerous. And like we've seen in the regular season, they've proven how good they've been. Then trading for Jay Crowder, who's going to be able to be a very good defender, Joe Ingles, who can knock down the three. I just really like the Bucks here. I think they're better than what their championship team was the other year. I think they're better than the Boston Celtics. Giannis is playing. Giannis is my MVP, but that might be a little biased.
That is definitely biased.
He's my MVP, but you know, you're playing. He's top three. He's top three in MVP voting. Defensive Player of the Year, Brook Lopez is playing. He's almost having a career year this year too. Drew Holiday is playing better than he's ever played in Milwaukee. I just don't see him. I mean, I could see him losing, but I see them as the biggest favorite to kind of come out of the East, and I believe if they come out of the East, they're going to win it all. So
I'm with you. I know it's not fun when the show hosts both agree with each other, but I think Milwaukee is far and away the best team in the NBA. They're far and away the best team in the Eastern Conference for a lot of reasons that you just mentioned. I don't need to repeat all of them. It's Milwaukee. It's been Milwaukee. If Chris Middleton is healthy, if he can survive an entire postseason run, there's nobody better than Milwaukee. Milwaukee can shoot the basketball better than anyone. They're more than capable on the defensive end of the floor. You mentioned Lopez. Drew Holiday and Giannis are elite defenders as well. Chris Middleton lost a little bit of a step, it's looked like, since he's returned, but maybe it's been more of a maintenance thing, right? Maybe we see Middleton a little bit more locked in the postseason. If you can win on the offensive and defensive end of the floor on a regular basis, you're going to put yourself in a good opportunity. Matchup wise, I think Boston could present some problems with Milwaukee, but we'll see. Milwaukee, they have the script. They know what the script is. They're composed. They have literally zero circus going around in their locker room. It's Milwaukee for me. So we both have Milwaukee and Golden State in the finals. Are we going to be chalky? Are we going to pick the obvious? Are we going to pick Milwaukee to win the title, or are we going with the Warriors here at plus 950?
You can choose the Warriors, but I don't think I can bet against my Bucks here. I mean, obviously there's a little bit of bias in it because I'm a fan, but then again, it's like, who on the Golden State Warriors is going to be able to guard Giannis Antetokounmpo? Obviously, you've got Andrew Wiggins and Draymond Green, but Giannis is a 7-footer. You've seen what he did against Phoenix when he was in the finals, dropping that 50 piece. Kevon Looney's not as good of a center as Brook Lopez. Drew Holiday is an elite defender. Steph Curry is obviously probably going to get his. He's going to put up some points. It's just who he is. He's a 4-time NBA champion, a multi-time MVP. But I got to go with the Bucks here. I mean, I wouldn't say it's pretty clear to me, but I really do feel like whoever comes out of the East is going to win the finals. And so in this one, because I'm choosing the Bucks to come out of the East, I got to choose them for the finals. If I was choosing Boston, I think I've got to choose Boston because I think Boston also matches up better with the Warriors as well. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Milwaukee here. Please don't take it as me being really biased. I promise I'm not. I promise I've actually looked at it and I'm not just being a biased fan here. But I've got to go with Milwaukee coming out of it here. I just think they're too good. I think they're too seasoned. Mike Budenholzer's been there now too. It's clear to me. They know the script, like you said. And I feel like Giannis is going to will his team to winning here. So I've got Milwaukee in this one.
They're the best team. They have been the best team. I think the NBA, it's the one sport where I think a lot of times the sexy team does win, or like the non-sexy team does win. There's not often a dark horse that wins the NBA championship. It's not March Madness. It's not the World Series. It's not the Super Bowl. Like, the best team can and often does win an NBA championship. The Warriors and the Cavs made the finals 4 straight years against each other because they were the 2 best teams in the league. It's like Milwaukee's a 1 seed for a reason. They're the favorite at the sports books for a reason. Like, if you want to lay some money on it, like they're the team to do it on, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, Joe, I appreciate you joining, man. It's been fun chopping up, talking NBA, guys. Joe's been jumping on a lot, talking NBA with us as of late. Make sure you go support his work. Aspiring NBA front office personnel, maybe a GM. We'll see when you get out of college and what that looks like. But really appreciate you sharing your knowledge. Hopefully have you back on a good amount during the NBA postseason as well. In the meantime, guys, if you find the content valuable, please like, share, subscribe. All of those good things helps elevate us in the algorithm, helps us connect with more people and share our thoughts with even more market share in the community. So really appreciate everyone tuning in. Good luck on your bets. If you are taking some futures action, wishing you the best of luck as long as you're not going against the Milwaukee Bucks. Until next time, guys, best of luck. Enjoy the action.